she stepped up as my wife and handled that. And there's been many times where I've been at my lowest, and she's always been the strongest to get me back up to like, get back out there. You gotta get back out there and do what you do. Don't worry about what's happening over here. I'm gonna handle that.
It started as a whisper behind velvet ropes, then rippled through every corner of Los Angeles. Snoop Dogg wasn't just angry with Sean Diddy Combs. He was the one who helped bring him down. The rumors claimed that when the FBI closed in on Diddy in late 2024, it wasn't coincidence. It was revenge. And what sparked it wasn't money or power. It was betrayal of the one thing Snoop had sworn to protect above everything else, his wife. Shantae brought us. We've learned that by the time Diddy was arrested on September 16, 2024, the two icons hadn't spoken in months. Insiders now allege their feud reached a breaking point when Snoop discovered what he believed to be the ultimate violation, that Diddy had been involved with Shantae, not once, but for years during the lavish private parties that later became the center of federal investigations. When Combs was convicted in November 2025 and sentenced to just over 4 years behind bars, many wondered how prosecutors had gathered so much insider detail about those gatherings. Now, speculation centers on one theory. Snoop gave them the roadmap. For years, the two men had moved in overlapping circles, their legacies tied to the same golden era of hip-hop. But sources close to both camps claimed that beneath the camaraderie was quiet competition. Snoop had built an empire on loyalty and image, while Diddy thrived on control and spectacle. When the federal case against Diddy exploded, charges of racketeering and transporting women for what prosecutors described as degrading private encounters. It was Snoop's alleged cooperation that reportedly turned the investigation from rumor into indictment.
Well, she just a strong black woman off the tippy. You know what I mean?
But the story doesn't begin in a courtroom. It begins with a marriage. Shantae Bruce, born and raised in Long Beach, met Calvin Bruce before the world knew him as Snoop Dogg when they were teenagers at Long Beach Polytechnic High School. They attended prom together, married in June 1997, and over nearly 3 decades became one of the rare constants in an industry built on temptation. She was there when Snoop went from street performer to global figure, when Death Row Records imploded, and when he reinvented himself as a family man and entrepreneur. In 2021, she officially became his manager, overseeing his spirits, gaming, and television ventures.
See, Snoop Dogg saying he owns Death Row is no different than me saying Tupac was alive because I had the unreleased Tupac music. It ain't no different, bro.
That's what makes the alleged betrayal so explosive. According to insiders, Snoop's world began to fracture early in 2024 when Suge Knight, calling from prison, began taunting him through his new podcast, Collect Call. In February that year, Knight posted a photo of Shantae in Hawaii with another man, writing, "I'll pray your wife stop going to Hawaii with other men." The post came after Snoop publicly wrote, "I'm praying for that brother that he finds peace." Within hours, Knight's comment section was flooded with speculation. Some said it was a desperate move from a man locked away. Others believed Knight knew exactly which nerve to strike. Behind the scenes, Snoop reportedly grew withdrawn. Friends described him as focused but cold. Then just weeks later, federal agents raided Diddy's Los Angeles and Miami homes as part of a growing investigation into what prosecutors called a pattern of coercive control and exploitation. Cassie Venter's lawsuit filed months earlier had already detailed how Diddy orchestrated private events referred to in court as freak-offs involving coercion and humiliation. Testimony during the 2025 trial confirmed that several high-profile guests had attended. What remained unclear was how investigators had obtained names, video footage, and financial ledgers from those gatherings.
Same kind of extortion that we heard when Cassie took the stand and testified on that airplane ride back from France. Diddy said, "You don't do a freak off, I'm going to release one of the freak off videos that you are profiled in and humiliate you."
That clue pointed to Snoop. He had attended Diddy's events in the past, but kept his distance after 2020 when tensions began rising between their entourages. Those who know him say Snoop had been protective of his image and of Shandy's reputation. He'd weathered his own scandals, a 2013 lawsuit later dismissed, social media accusations from influencers, and persistent gossip about past affairs. But through it all, Shantae remained his anchor. By late 2023, she was managing his bookings for NBC's The Voice and expanding their broadest collection brand. To discover that another powerful man, once a friend, may have crossed that line was, as one associate put it, unforgivable. We can trace the moment of retaliation to early 2024 after Suge Knight's Hawaii post reignited old grudges. Snoop's prayer for Knight to find peace seemed like a dismissal, but those who knew him said he was fuming privately. Within weeks, reports surfaced that federal agents had reached out to a major industry figure for information related to Diddy's social network. When Diddy was arrested in September, that same figure, unnamed in court filings, was described as a longtime West Coast artist turned entrepreneur. To those reading between the lines, there was little doubt who that might be. Still, this wasn't only about revenge. It was about survival. The FBI investigation had touched dozens of celebrities, and rumors swirled that video evidence from Diddy's events showed recognizable faces. By cooperating, Snoop may have been protecting his family from being dragged into the scandal. The turmoil and the stuff that I put her through and my journey on becoming successful because I had no understanding of what I was doing her, how I was hurting her. Meanwhile, public sympathy leaned towards Shantae. She had spent 27 years balancing loyalty and independence, often the quiet force behind Snoop's empire. In interviews, Snoop had praised her as the good to my bad. But by early 2025, that image of domestic unity was cracking under speculation. Photos of Shantae alone at industry events alongside cryptic captions about trust and truth-fueled theories that her relationship with Snoop was strained long before the Diddy fallout. Suge Knight's podcast stoked the fire again, hinting that the lady of the house wasn't always home. In that climate, Snoop's silence spoke volumes. While Diddy's trial unfolded in New York, Snoop stayed away from cameras, appearing only once at an NBC event in March 2025, refusing questions about the case. What? There are whispers that he too may have secrets to keep? The same files that condemned Diddy reportedly include names that investigators have yet to reveal. And one of those names, according to two former staffers, belongs to someone much closer to Snoop than he ever imagined. When you get to be the age that we at, you get to become as successful as we are. You have to start doing some things that matter for the future. As the investigation deepened, we began to realize that Snoop's cooperation with the authorities might not have been a simple act of revenge. It looked like part of a much larger play, a calculated maneuver to protect everything he had built. When Snoop quietly acquired the rights to Death Row Records in 2023, it marked a full-circle moment in hip-hop history. But Suge Knight didn't see it as a triumph. He saw it as theft. From his prison cell, Knight repeatedly claimed that Snoop stole the label, insisting that the paperwork was never legitimate and that the deal had been manipulated through hidden connections in corporate law. We can't ignore how quickly that acquisition was finalized or how swiftly Snoop rebranded Death Row as a family-friendly digital empire. For someone once accused of glorifying the streets, it felt like the ultimate redemption story. Unless, of course, that redemption came at someone else's expense. Industry observers believe Snoop's move to work with prosecutors against Diddy may have been designed to insulate his brand before any new federal scrutiny touched Death Row. Remember, many of the same investigators who handled the Diddy case had already been reviewing other entertainment companies for suspicious financial ties.
Your wife's been by you for your
She's
whole
your high
career.
school
Your high school sweetheart. She is.
You never leave home without it.
Yeah, that's right. But how has she kind of taken you on this journey? Tell us about her.
I think my wife has been my best friend for a couple of reasons. One is that she always understood who I was and who I needed to become.
At the center of all this stands Shantae Briss. To outsiders, she appeared as the loyal wife blindsided by betrayal. But those who've worked inside the Briss family enterprise paint a far more complex picture. As Snoop's official manager since 2021, Shantae was no bystander. She was the architect of many of his key business moves. Insiders claim she was the one who pushed for the Death Row acquisition, the OnlyFans rejection in the shift toward television and endorsement work. When the Diddy allegations began to surface, she reportedly advised Snoop to distance himself legally and morally from anything connected to Combs' lifestyle. That phrasing, legally and morally, now feels loaded. Did she know what was coming? Was she protecting her husband? Or was she strategically preparing for a takedown that would permanently separate Snoop's image from one of the most scandalized figures in modern entertainment? Some insiders go even further, alleging that Shantae was instrumental in collecting evidence that later reached the authorities. One former assistant from the Bradis office claims that digital records and phone archives were quietly compiled during 2024, including communications from Diddy's event organizers and entertainment promoters. If true, that would mean Shantae wasn't merely a victim of betrayal. She was an active participant in the dismantling of Diddy's empire. It would also mean that the same woman Diddy allegedly targeted in secret became the silent force behind his public downfall. That paradox, the victim turned strategist, is what keeps this story from fading.
A lot of times you would have him with a younger female, and there's a power dynamic there. A more impressionable girl is easier to reel in. Consent is between the people that are engaging, and I wasn't there in these situations to understand the consent.
We have to remember that the case against Diddy didn't just rest on Cassie Ventura's lawsuit or witness statements. It was built on a network of corroborating testimonies, timestamps, and surveillance data that prosecutors said matched the logistics of private events dating back nearly 10 years. Some of those events were held on the West Coast in properties managed by entertainment companies loosely tied to Snoop's extended network. Could it be coincidence that Snoop later purchased one of those same properties under a holding company in 2022? Perhaps. But the timing raises questions about how deeply these two mogul worlds were intertwined and how carefully Snoop might have been extracting himself before the storm hit. Meanwhile, Suge Knight's podcast became a megaphone for speculation. He warned that a tell-all book was on the way, claiming it would reveal the truth about who really sold out who. He hinted that Snoop's rise from death row artist to global businessman was built on a long line of deals with devils in suits. Given Knight's reputation for bluster, most dismissed his words as bitterness from behind bars. But when federal agents began subpoenaing financial documents from old death row affiliates, Knight's ranting started to sound less like revenge and more like foreknowledge. If his book ever sees daylight, it could ignite another firestorm, one that forces the industry to reconsider the alliances that shaped modern hip-hop.
Tick tock, the clock is ticking on Diddy because on Friday he finds out what his sentence is going to be. But today he found out what prosecutors would like that sentence to be, and it is vastly different from what his attorneys have suggested to the judge. Prosecutors want him to do 11 years, just over 11.
The world collapsed in public view. During his sentencing in late 2025, the man once known for his glamour and power looked drained, admitting in court, "I got lost in excess." That one sentence captured everything: the wealth, the control, the appetite that had defined him for decades. The prosecution detailed how he used influence and fear to sustain his inner circle, citing testimony from multiple witnesses who described private encounters that blurred the line between loyalty and exploitation. His conviction on transportation-related charges may have been lighter than the public expected, but the symbolic weight was immense. The mogul, who had once ruled over stars, was now confined to an 8x 10-feet cell in MDC, Brooklyn. We can't overlook the irony here. While Diddy wakes up on a steel bed, Snoop wakes up to board meetings, family dinners, and a thriving brand that stretches from music to gaming. It's a dramatic reversal that has the entire industry whispering. Did Snoop just outmaneuver the system that once threatened to consume him? Or is he merely the latest in a long line of survivors who learned to trade silence for survival? Either way, his control over death row, his standing with major networks, and his immaculate public image make him one of the few untouchable figures left from that generation.
Diddy, obviously just starting out his time, well, not just starting out, but starting out his official sentence since being sentenced not too long ago. And I think suffice to say, it's not going well so far.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, he's but 4 years and change that he's going to ultimately have to serve, although he has served already a year as he awaited his trial and then went through his trial.
But whisperers continue to grow louder. Reports have surfaced suggesting that Diddy, even from behind bars, has been speaking privately with journalists, promising new names if he's granted a sentence reduction. If those names include anyone from Snoop's inner circle, this saga could reignite with devastating force. At the same time, Shandy's upcoming memoir, Paid the Cost to be the Boss Lady, promises to chronicle her life in the public eye and all the lessons she has learned along the way. No one knows if she'll address the rumors or the Diddy connection, but the timing couldn't be more strategic. A carefully worded chapter could either silence speculation or confirm it. Meanwhile, insiders warned that Snoop's cooperation with federal authorities may extend far beyond the Diddy case. The FBI's Entertainment Crime Division reportedly has ongoing files involving other prominent figures, some of whom attended the same events now under scrutiny. If Snoop remains in contact with those investigators, it could mean the next wave of revelations is already being prepared. One former label executive said it bluntly: if he helped them once, he can help them again, and everyone knows it. That fear is beginning to reshape relationships across the industry as artists quietly distance themselves from both camps, unwilling to be caught in the next chapter of this saga. The broader implications are staggering. We're not just talking about one man's revenge or another's punishment. We're looking at a potential reckoning across the entire hip-hop establishment. The same generation that once ruled through swagger and secrecy is now facing an era where private misdeeds no longer stay buried. And at the center of it all, Snoop Dogg and Shantae Briss stand like twin pillars. One of legacy, one of loyalty, both carrying knowledge that could shake the foundation of the culture they helped build.
We all know that. I have to say, I'd never heard of this movie, and I have little kids. It was called Lightyear from 2022. I have absolutely no problem with the content. Like, he has a problem with the content in that movie. I have no problem at all. I thought that was presented as a brief history part of this movie. It wasn't a big part of the movie, and gay couples exist, and gay marriage is legal, and I found it all completely unproblematic. That said,
too many questions linger. Did Snoop orchestrate Diddy's downfall purely to protect his wife or to secure his empire? Was Shantae the betrayed partner or the silent engineer of the plan? Could Suge Knight's accusations about the death row takeover be linked to the same network of influence that toppled Diddy? And if Snoop truly gave the authorities what they needed once, who might he turn on next? In a world built on fame and secrecy, power is never permanent. It only changes hands. We can feel that this story isn't finished. There are messages that haven't surfaced, testimonies that haven't been unsealed, and voices still afraid to speak. Diddy's downfall may have closed one chapter, but the book itself is wide open. So we have to ask, when the truth finally comes out, will Snoop still be the hero, or will he become the next name in the headlines? Tell us what you think, because one thing's for sure in this game: loyalty is currency, and somebody's about to run out. Until next time, stay watching, because this storm is far from over.